It's time now for our press review with Leo McGuinn. We're going back to one of our top stories to start, Leo. The news that Israel's parliament has voted to ban UNRWA from operating in the country. What's been the reaction from the Israeli and Arab press? I'll start in Israel because, as you'll see, the wording's very different depending on where you might get your news. This is Israel Hayom, which is the country's most read newspaper. It's often been criticised for being a mouthpiece for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On the front page of their site today, this is their headline: Israel ends ties with terrorist-linked UNRWA, which is, of course, the UN's Palestinian Refugee Agency. They report that during the Knesset deliberations on the law, there was shown video evidence of UNRWA's personnel's involvement in terrorism. And they said, given this background and having proved that UNRWA and employees acted against Israel, the state must determine that UNRWA's activities in the country must cease. So that's a brief look at Israel. But what about the Arab world? Well, I'll start with Arab News, which is a Saudi-based publication backed by the Saudi government. They say that the legislation risks collapsing the already fragile process of distributing aid in Gaza. Well, the Middle East Eye, which is London-based but funded by Qatar, report that 7 of Israel's allies have condemned the ban. The foreign ministers of 7 different countries releasing a joint statement. Germany, France, Britain, Australia, Canada, Japan and South Korea all warned that the bill could have devastating consequences. The bills will prohibit Israeli officials from providing services or dealing with UNRWA employees, an outright ban on UNRWA from operating in areas under Israeli control, particularly in northern Gaza. I'll finish with The Guardian. They have this editorial piece this morning. They say that the banning of the agency with no replacement will only cripple the Palestinians in their hour of need. It's a deeply irresponsible move by Israeli lawmakers, they say, which exhibits a brazen contempt for the global norms that govern human rights, conflict and diplomacy. And moving to the US next. Yesterday, you talked about the Washington Post's decision not to endorse any candidate in these presidential elections, which caused some controversy. The owner of the paper, Jeff Bezos, has now responded. What's he said? Billionaire Jeff Bezos, who of course owns the Washington Post, responding in the paper with this opinion piece, attempting to justify the decision. You can see the headline, "The hard truth, Americans don't trust the news media." He says, "Our profession is now the least trusted of all." Bezos's argument is that presidential endorsements create a perception of bias. Declining to endorse presidential candidates is not enough to move them up very far on the trust scale, but it's a good start, he says, a meaningful step. And he says he actually wishes he'd made the change a lot earlier. So that's Jeff Bezos's defense. Many critics call it nonsense. They say he's simply worried about possible reprisals from Donald Trump if he is to be elected president. And it certainly hasn't washed with readers because, as you can see, as reported by NPR, over 200,000 subscribers have now cancelled their digital subscriptions. That's roughly 8% of the paper's 2.5 million subscribers. And there have been huge repercussions within the newsroom as well. 2 columnists have resigned from the paper and 2 writers have stepped down from the editorial board. The main issue, many critics say, is the timing. Less than 2 weeks before Election Day, the former executive editor of the Post spoke out in an interview with NPR, saying that if the decision had been made 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even 1 year ago, it probably would have been okay. But this was made within a couple of weeks of the election, and there was no serious deliberation with the editorial board of the paper. He finishes by saying it was clearly a decision made for other reasons, not for reasons of high principle. All right, Leo, and you're finishing with some sports. The Spaniards having a good night at the Ballon d'Or ceremony on Monday night, but there was also controversy. Tell us about that. It was double win for Spain. Carras, as you can see on the front page of L'Equipe, Aitana Bonmati winning the women's Ballon d'Or and Rodri winning the men's. Conquistadors is the headline that L'Equipe have gone for. Obviously, it's big news
in Spain. The front page of Marca, which is the country's biggest sporting newspaper, they say it's about time. They're specifically referring to Rodri there, the first Spanish winner of the award since 1960. The aptly named Sport, which is a Barcelona-based sports newspaper, called the victory a win for football. It comes off the back of Rodri's fantastic season. He won Best Player at Euro 2024, which Spain won, of course, and he was instrumental in Manchester City winning the Premier League again. But as you mentioned, Karis, the win was somewhat controversial because it wasn't at all expected, and actually until a few hours before the ceremony, Real Madrid winger Vinicius Junior was odds-on favourite to win the award, and it certainly didn't go down well with Real Madrid, as we can see in Le Monde this morning. Real Madrid actually boycotted the ceremony after finding out that Vinicius Junior wouldn't win. They said travelling to Paris, they wouldn't be travelling to Paris because they didn't feel respected. That's despite the fact that there was actually 4 Real Madrid players in the top 6 of the voting. Vinicius coming second, Bellingham third, Kylian Mbappe in 6th, and Dani Carvajal in 4th. La Vanguardia asked the question, why didn't Vinicius win? They tried to answer that question. According to them, values of fair play came into the equation. Vinicius Junior, quite a controversial figure. They say call him too arrogant to win the award. They also argue that maybe the votes were split because there were so many Real Madrid players in the running. Just to mention Aitana Bonmati to finish, it's actually her second Ballon d'Or feminine in a row. No controversy there. Certainly the best player in the world, and actually it's 4 in a row for Spain in the Ballon d'Or feminine. 4 out of the 6 have been Spaniards winning the Ballon d'Or feminine. So a great day for Spain, and they're certainly on top of the footballing world at the moment.
Indeed, and there's certainly politics in sport, even though we try to separate the two. Thank you very much for that look at the papers.